For our introduction to chemistry, what we're going to do is we're going to spend the first couple of videos going over a review of stuff hopefully you learned in elementary school, as well as some of the terms that we're going to need to understand everything. So one of the first things we want to cover is just a reminder of the particle theory of matter. Remember, particle theory of matter describes the composition and behavior of all matter, and matter is anything that has mass and occupies space. It has to have both of these things to be considered matter. Now, in our particle theory of matter, we have 5 basic postulates, or main ideas. First one being all matter is made of tiny particles that have empty space between them. Well, we know this, and we know these tiny particles are called atoms or molecules, and we'll talk about this more in depth in the coming weeks. Different substances are made up of different kinds of particles. Again, we'll talk about this in the coming weeks. Particles are in constant random motion. This is a key thing. So particles are constantly moving. So the type of motion that they have is dependent on the state of matter that they're in. The particles of a substance move faster as its temperature increases. Okay, well, temperature really is just a measure of the motion of the particles. So if I increase the temperature, I increase their motion. And then the last one, particles are attracted to each other. Now we can use our particle theory of matter to understand the state that it's in and the relationship. So for example, if I have particles that are not moving very much and they have really high attractions to each other, then what's going to happen is the particles will be held close to each other and they're going to be solid, and it's going to be rigid and defined shape. Whereas if I have particles that have lots of motion but very little attraction to each other, then the particles will be able to move around freely. They'll fill the space or the container, and it'll most likely be a gas. And so our particle theory of matter helps us to understand the states and the relationship between them. Now, we can take all matter, which is anything that has mass and volume, and classify it into 2 broad categories, depending on what the matter is composed of. We have what we call pure substances and mixtures. And these 2 categories is dependent on the types of particles or substances that they're made up of. So a pure substance is something that only has one type of particle, whereas a mixture has 2 or more that are joined physically. And so, for example, in a mixture, if I took sand and salt, and I have 2 types of particles, I combine them and I stir them together. So because I stirred them together, I physically mixed them. Okay? But my pure substances and mixtures can also each be broken down into 2 categories, with pure substances being broken down into elements and compounds. Okay? And an element is a substance that has only one type of atom. So for example, gold. If I have a gold ring, it only has gold atoms in it. And then a compound is a substance that's composed of 2 or more. For example, water. Water has hydrogen atoms in it and oxygen atoms in it. Likewise, our mixtures can be broken into 2 categories, and this is dependent on how the mixture looks. So we have what we call our mechanical mixtures. In the past has been called heterogeneous mixtures, and then we have what we call solutions, which has also been called homogeneous solutions. And that refers to whether or not I can see the different particles. So in a mechanical mixture, I can see the different particles. So this is again my sand-salt mixture. I can see the sand particles and the salt particles. Whereas in a solution, it looks uniform or the same throughout. And so an example of this would be when I dissolve salt in water. When I dissolve the salt in water and I stir it, I can't see the salt particles. All I can see is my clear solution.